Hey everyone. So I guess I'm kind of excited because this is my first book vlog, and if you don't know this already, I love books and I've always loved books. Like, I was kind of your textbook bookworm growing up. So like, I literally always had a book with me wherever I went, and I read as much as I could because I just loved the worlds that would open up, that you could travel to in the pages of a book. So reading is something that actually I kind of took a break from, in a sense, for a couple of years where I wasn't really reading that much. And then it's only in the past 4 years that I've really reconnected with that side of me, and I couldn't be happier. It's like, it really just brings back home to me how much growth can happen when you read, and how many things you can discover, and how many places and new thoughts you can travel to. And anyway, so that's why I'm really excited about sharing this book vlog with you, and I hope that even if you don't like books, that you'll find it interesting at the very least. And if you do like books, then maybe, I don't know, maybe there'll be a book or two that you're going to end up wanting to read. So that's kind of what I hope with this. I have a little stack of books here in front of me. And these are some of the books that I read in 2018. And actually, they're more than I thought. Like, obviously, compared to what I used to read when I was a kid, and you don't have that many responsibilities except going to school, right? So now that I'm not a kid anymore, I don't get to read as much, but I am trying to read as much as I can. And so I'm actually surprised with how many I have here, and I guess I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 8 books here, which is more than I remembered. And it doesn't seem like that many, but it's still way more than what it used to be during those years when I wasn't like reading at all anymore. So let me start out with the first one, which I'm really excited about because it's with my favorite author that you've probably heard me write about or talk about, or all of those things, which is Rebecca Solnit. So this one is A Field Guide to Getting Lost. And if you've heard me talk about Rebecca Solnit, the book that I was telling you about is called The Far Away Nearby. And that was the first book that I read of hers. And I think it's the second one of this type of book that she's written. I've not read many of her other books, but from what I gather from reading the summaries, it seems like this one and The Far Away Nearby are kind of a similar vein, where they kind of intersect between memoir and essays and knowledge about books and science and nature and experiences. And it's just this like complex interweaving of all these things. And so since I absolutely love The Far Away Nearby, I thought it would be interesting to read this one, A Field Guide to Getting Lost, which is the first one of this style that she wrote. And I have to say, it's absolutely beautiful. I really recommend it. It's not, I wouldn't say though that it's as tight as the second one. Obviously this is the first one that she wrote. So in the second one, The Far Away Nearby, it just is so interconnected, and like, even though it seems to go everywhere, it's all linked to each other. So there's something even better with that one than with this one. But nevertheless, I totally recommend it if it sounds like your kind of book. It's a labyrinthine book about growth and getting lost and embracing the unknown. And anyway, I love Rebecca Solnit, so I'll stop talking because otherwise I'm just going to keep talking about her. Yeah, so anyway, this was definitely a very good read. Another book that I read was actually given to me by a friend of mine, and it is called The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. And yes, it looks very thick, but what you'll notice is that the writing is actually quite big. And it's because I think it's more aimed towards young adult fiction. And it is a fantasy book. I don't know if you're familiar with Philip Pullman, but I really loved his, what's it called? His Dark Materials trilogy, which is The Golden Compass, The Amber Spyglass, The Subtle Knife. I think those are the three. And I remember that when I read those when I was in my early 20s, I devoured them, like all three of them within like, I don't know, a 2-week span, because they were so imaginative and fun and just something completely new that I hadn't read before. So this is actually a prequel to that trilogy. And I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Since it is, I would say, like, you know, young adult fiction or teenage fiction, the writing is, I guess what I would say is the writing doesn't blow me away in terms of like how it's written, but he is an amazing storyteller, and it's super fun. I mean, already just the themes are things that I think are really interesting. For example, each person has these little creatures. I'm trying to remember what they're called. Anyway, each person is kind of born with this shape-shifting creature that is them but isn't them, and that helps them and gives them insight as they move forward in their life. And then when they become adults, it kind of solidifies into one specific creature or animal. And so that's already part of his Dark Materials trilogy, if you're familiar with that one. And so that idea is already really fun, like this part of you that's not part of you but is part of you, and that can give you insightful thoughts or help or give you a new perspective on things. And usually I would say these creatures are quite emotional and very attuned to danger or to more, I guess, the subconscious layers that we inhabit. And so that's already really fun, and I love the fact that those come back in here. But as well, other themes that I really liked is there is a huge flood. As you can see, there's a little boat on a big body of water with all the symbolic that holds with it. There's strange islands, mysterious fog. I don't know. I'm a sucker for those things. So I enjoyed it a lot, and I am looking forward to the next one, because I think he has another one that's going to be a sequel to this one. But definitely I would say easy reading. The writing isn't mind-blowing, but it's very fun, and I enjoyed it. So that was a good one. Completely different. Rumi. And you may have heard me talk about these actually in the Patreon lens sometimes. Like, I think I've read a few of these poems to you. And they were recommended to me by somebody who had gotten some artwork of mine years ago and then wrote to me, I think, on my Facebook page and recommended, or like gave me maybe little snippets of the poetry. And every time I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So I went out and finally got this book. And I haven't finished it because it is a poetry book, and so I don't know if you're familiar with reading poetry, but it can be kind of dense even though the words are sparse. So I usually just dab in, pick a few, read a few, put it on the side, pick it up again. So yeah, I haven't read absolutely every single one, but I have to say they're very beautiful. And in particular, what I really like about Rumi is that he uses very simple imagery to speak about very deep notions of growth and transformation and being present, and there's a lot of speak about love. Obviously, so he was a Persian mystic, and so he does talk about God a lot, and even though I'm not particularly religious in that way, it's also very spiritual, so but in the sense of more like connectedness with nature and with things and with yourself and others. So I don't know, those are just simple things that I like about Rumi. So I just opened this up, and there's a 4-line poem that's really beautiful and very simple, but yet, I don't know, I'll read it to you. I honor those who try to rid themselves of any lying, who empty the self and have only clear being there. I mean, it's so simple, but it's just so true and beautiful. Yeah, and that's how I feel every time I pick this up. It's always also very poetic. Obviously, I mean, it's, poetry, but um, what I mean by that is, I don't know, it's just very evocative. I'm going to read this one to you. Literally, this is a perfect representation of how I feel every time I pick up this book. I pick it up, I open it up, I start reading a sentence, and then I can't stop reading it because it's just so simple and beautiful and meaningful. And yet there's still so much mystery to it. And it's making me emotional saying that. I'm an HSP. I'm a highly sensitive person, so yeah, I get emotional about things like books or poetry or. So this one is called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Yeah. Rumi. This is Rumi Selected Poems, if you're curious, and it's the translation by Coleman Banks, which is particularly beautiful. The next one is the first book I've ever read by this author called Octavia E. Butler, who is quite well known actually, and who works with science fiction mostly. And I picked this up actually when I went back to Montreal in one of my favorite bookstores there called John and Quarterly. And I have to say, it was a really awesome read. If you like the worlds that are dystopian, kind of society crumbling, and yet someone trying to survive and to thrive and to carry meaning amidst the chaos, then this book is for you. It's really a very powerful, moving book. And actually one thing that the main character has is something called hyper-empathy, where she literally feels, and I mean, I can relate to that to some extent because I'm highly sensitive, but this is even more intense, where, for example, if somebody is injured or she sees somebody get punched or hit, then she will physically feel that, or she will start getting a bruise. So she is this person who has this condition and is living in this very violent, very chaotic, dystopian world. So that's a really interesting blend between the two, and how she uses that to her strength, and how, of course, it has its disadvantages, but there's also a lot of meaning and beauty that is carried with that. So really beautiful book. And she has a second one, Parable of the I don't remember what, that I'm looking forward to reading once I get through my pile of books that I have to read before that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading that, and I've always have a soft spot for science fiction that carries, well, a lot of science fiction does, but that carries meaning and purpose and things that can make you reflect back on your own life or what it's like living right now. So that's always really fascinating, and definitely recommend it. It's a good one. I mean, I guess, to be honest, I don't have that many books in my list that I wouldn't recommend to other people, so I guess that's one good thing to know. This is another book that was given to me by a different friend of mine, and it's called The Soul of an Octopus. as you may know, I love deep sea creatures. I love octopi, I love jellyfish, I love animals and creatures of all sorts. And specifically, this is about somebody who is intrigued by consciousness in the octopus, and so brings us through her journey with encountering these octopus and discovering how intelligent they are, but how it's a completely different form of intelligence than the one that we consider to be intelligent as humans, if that makes sense. I'm making it sound way more complicated than it actually is. The writing itself didn't blow my mind. I have to say, it's really like, I mean, it's most of all, okay, I guess my point is that what blew my mind was the knowledge that was carried in this book. All the things that she talks about, the experiments, the experiences with the creatures, the stories with the octopi, what they're like, how they live, how they think, and this strange confluence of really particular characteristics that is completely unknown to us as human beings. That's one of the reasons I loved the book, not so much the writing. But definitely worth it if you like science, if you like finding out about new things and discovering interesting perspectives on nature. Yet again, another complete switch here. This very thin book, very small book, wow. I'm not sure how to start with this one because so there are a few things. One of them is, I would say it goes closer towards experimental novel writing than generic, I guess, non-experimental work. And so because of that, it can be a little bit difficult to enter into it from the get-go. To give you an example, I think I bought this 2 years ago, and I've tried to read it 6, 7 times maybe, and every time I would pick it up and I would read the first 10 pages and then I would put it down, forget about it, read a different book, whatever. And I think it's because of the experimental nature of the writing, which you really kind of need to let yourself enter. You need to let yourself enter that space. And once you do, it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. Like, literally, it moved me to tears multiple times. Talking about it is making me emotional again, because it is such a deep perspective on what grief can be like. And you'll know this from the beginning of the book, but it's the story of a man who has a wife and 2 kids, 2 sons. And from one day to the next, his wife dies suddenly. And it's the story of the grief of this man and the boys and how they deal with this grief. And it brings in this crow, an imaginary crow, as a representation of the grief and of the complex emotions that are tied into that, into the relationship, her death. And I feel like as I'm describing this, I'm not giving it the honor that it should, because I really think it's an amazing book. But it does, like I said, take some time for you to enter into its space. So I don't know what else to say. I love it. Read it. Very different book this time. Probably maybe more for the artists or creatives among you, of which there are many, I'm sure. This is Share Your Work by Austin Kleon. And I'm sure you've heard of Austin Kleon because he also he wrote a very well-known book called Steal Like an Artist. And I have to say, really great read, very interesting perspectives. He simplifies concepts that can be quite complicated and makes them very easy to absorb and understand and relate to. And for anybody that is, I guess, an aspiring creative or somebody who's aspiring to become professional with their creative work, this is a definite must read. It talks about a lot of different things, including like how to keep delving into your creativity, show the work that you want to be doing. It's just a really, really great read, and I'll maybe just flip through it just so you can see. So there's text, but then there's also diagrams, which are very typical of what he does. And it's just a great read. And I actually haven't read Steal Like an Artist, but I'm planning on getting that because I really love this, and it has so much little valuable information in it that is always a great reminder and can push you further in your reflection around art, around creativity, around the creative process, around how to go about it in a way that's respectful of other people's creative work. Couldn't recommend it more. So that one's that one. And we now are coming to the last one, which is called Everything Under by Daisy Johnson. And I picked this up in my local bookstore. I try to go there as often as possible because I really like bookstores. They're such magical spaces, and there's so many bookstores that are closing down nowadays, I guess because of ebooks and also Amazon. And I admit it, I do buy books on Amazon every once in a while. But so I do try to support local bookstores when I can, and this is a book that I bought at that local bookstore, and it was just standing on one of the shelves, and the thing that drew me first to it was the cover, which is absolutely beautiful. I love the colors, the design. It just really spoke to me. And then, of course, the title. I mean, check that title. It's like so poetic and mysterious, and you're like, what? Everything under what? What are you talking about? So that was another thing that drew me to it. And it was also, I think, either shortlisted or I think it was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, or maybe it won something. I think it was shortlisted. In any case, I picked it up, read a first paragraph, blew my mind, like literally. So out of all the books that I was showing you, this is the one where the writing is what blew me away the most. The writing is just, and maybe I will read a tiny passage for you just so you can get a sense of the kind of writing. This is actually the first paragraph of the book. The places we are born come back. They disguise themselves as migraines, stomach aches, insomnia. They are the way we sometimes wake falling, fumbling for the bedside lamp, certain everything we've built is gone in the night. We become strangers to the places we are born. They would not recognize us, but we will always recognize them. They are marrow to us. They are bred into us. If we were turned inside out, there would be maps cut into the wrong side of our skin, just so we could find our way back. Except, cut wrong side into my skin are not canals and train tracks and a boat, but always you. So that gives you kind of a sense of the kind of writing that you're going to encounter in this book, which I really love. The characters are really fascinating, and it is, I have to say, a difficult book in the sense of the stories of the characters, what they go through, their relationships. It's not a like a light, rosy romance, you know what I mean? Not that I have anything against that, on the contrary, but I'm just saying, like, you need to be kind of prepared for the depth and weight of the characters, but there's also so much beauty in it, and it talks about memory and how we gather experiences as we grow, the relationship between a daughter and her mother once she's an adult. It talks about loss and connection, loneliness, nature, and also the power of the imagination, and how that kind of interweaves in a way that's kind of akin to magical realism. So there's a lot of things I really loved about this book, including the writing, as I said. And another thing which is crazy is that, like, okay, so it was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, and the author, Daisy Johnson, she's only like 28, which, like, wow. I mean, 28 and already, well, whatever. It kind of blows my mind, and I'm really looking forward to reading more of her work. So yeah, I think it's somebody to keep an eye out on. Yeah, so if that sounds like it could appeal to you, then you might enjoy it. I thought it was a great read. Also got me emotional. I would actually say that's maybe one of the ways that I judge books. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but do they make me emotional? Like, do I really connect that deeply that they make me cry? I don't know, I think that makes sense to kind of judge a book by that, but it could just be me. Though, I have to say, I do enjoy, like, fun, light books as well. I just don't read as many of those. Does that say anything about me? I don't know. Well, whatever. Whatever. Okay, so if I had to kind of choose, I guess my favorite ones in this pile of books, which is difficult for me because choices are like the worst and I find choices horrible. But okay, I'm going to choose 2 winners and 2 runner-ups. Does that work? My 2 winners are these 2 books, which blew me away, both of them, with their writing and their depth and their sensitivity. This one, obviously, like I said, a little bit more experimental. This one, more of a regular novel, but very, well, regular. I say regular, it's not regular. But anyway, these 2 are my definite favorites of the year. And then I would say the 2 runner-ups are Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, which is a much lighter read in a sense than these 2, even though it is kind of a dystopian world, but really beautiful world building, fascinating characters, and I'm really interested to see where she goes with it in the sequel. And of course, Rebecca Solnit, Field Guide to Getting Lost, also fabulous writing. I mean, well, I said this was the best writing, but I mean, Solnit is right up there. Love it. So yeah, these would be my 4 winners, though all the others are really amazing as well. And it just depends on, I guess, what kind of book you want to read, because I mean, there are tons of different kinds of books. And so I often have like one novel going that I'm enjoying because it's like just kind of fun or adventurous and easy reading. And then I'll have one book that's maybe more related to work or art-based things. Then I'll have like a graphic novel. So it really just depends on what you're looking to read and what you're in the mood for. So I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe that it made you want to pick up 1 or 2 of these books, because I really do believe that reading is one of the most beautiful things you can do. It's one of the best ways that we can grow and gain perspective on other people and get inspiration also. I mean, like, literally a lot of my inspiration comes from reading and books and stuff. So yeah, that's another thing that's awesome about books. I hope you enjoyed that, and let me know if you want me to keep doing these. I mean, it's my first one. Do you like it? I don't know. I hope you do, but I have no idea. So let me know if it's something that you want me to do regularly, tell you about the books that I'm currently reading, or books that I would recommend. For example, like art books, illustration books, zines. I don't know, there's a cajillion ways that I can go about this if it's something that you're interested in. So let me know, and if you do, I will keep making these. Thank you so much for being here, as usual, as my patrons. It's so special for me to be able to share with you all these things that I wouldn't necessarily share otherwise. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you soon.